This episode of Bachelor Party is brought to you by Folgers. Mornings set the tone for the rest of your day, and so does your first cup of coffee, so it's important to have coffee that's up to the task. Folgers offers so many varieties, whether you're looking for a smooth or rich cup of coffee. Folgers has a roast that will surprise you with delicious flavor. Folgers is available in a range of varieties, including dark roasts like Black Silk and Noir. It also is available in K-Cup for Keurig. I wake up and I basically immediately make coffee. And for my entire time of college, we almost exclusively had Folgers, so I'm very familiar with how delicious it is. I love on The Bachelor when they also drink coffee in the morning. I love when you see them still in their pajamas, waiting for Chris Harrison to come in. It's hilarious. And hey, they should maybe drink Folgers coffee because the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Today's episode is also brought to you by Schmidt's. If you've always wanted to try a natural deodorant but were worried it might not work, Schmidt's does. You'll never find aluminum or artificial fragrances. Made with coconut oil and essential oils, Schmidt's keeps you fresh all day naturally. Visit schmitz.com to learn more or find it at a retailer near you. Welcome to Bachelor Party. I'm Juliet Litman. New schedule. We're just anticipating Clayshia by getting on the Tuesday night schedule. Here I am. It's going to be happening all season, right after Claire/Tayshia. This podcast will be coming to you. And, I just want to feel that Clayshia energy. And so as a result, diving headfirst back into Bachelor Nation after some dalliances with Bravo and Netflix. And to do so, I am joined by Brett Vergara. Hi, Brett. Welcome.
Hello. I'm so excited to be on.
Air horn, air horn, air horn. We'll have to add in some sound effects. Yeah.
Or I was just going to do them, but okay. Or you can add them, layer it, do a little,
I like your
harmony.
sound effects. They're good.
Okay,
Thank you very
works.
much. Brett, I feel like you're a Bachelor Twitter celebrity, maybe B-list celebrity. Maybe you'll get to A-list this season.
I don't know what I am. I mean, that's very flattering. I just I'm over
I called
here
you
just trying my
B-list. I'm
best.
sorry.
Just like the rest of us, I'm just trying my best over here, and for some reason, this has become this whole little world for me.
When did you start watching The Bachelor, Bachelorette, or various spinoffs?
So sometimes I feel like a bit of an imposter in Bachelor Nation because I'm in the grand scheme of things, fairly new. Like my first season was Bachelor in Paradise.
Oh my God.
It was Bachelor in Paradise of 2016. So,
2016.
We'll get into the politics of Bachelor Nation a little bit later, but I think so that was Nick's redemption Paradise.
Yes, it was.
And I was watching with a friend of mine.
They were able to have Bachelor in Paradise in 2016. Here we are.
I know exactly.
All we get is the La Quinta.
You really long for the good old days of 2016 when it was only just embers, and now it's just a full inferno.
That's funny. I was thinking about the Hillary Clinton gifts that came out of the first presidential debate in 2016 when she did that shimmy. And what a different time.
You know how I actually remember, because, in these times, time is just fake. We're doing Bachelor on Tuesdays and just nothing,
it's crazy.
Nothing makes sense anymore. So sometimes I forget when the election was, because it's just, and how I remember. And I also remember when Pokemon Go was because of Pokemon Go to the polls. It's such a donkey bridge. It just connects.
The Ringer began in 2016, so I judge a lot of things against when the Ringer began. June 1st, 2016. We only had a short life before the election. But anyway, we'll come back to politics. I do want to talk about the politicization of Bachelor Nation, which I think is increasingly happening. And it's interesting to see what's going on there. Obviously, Rachel, who's my good friend, and I know that she's your friend as well. She mentioned that you guys are pals.
Yeah. And I think especially more these days too, because we've had plenty of passing interactions, but then she just was amazingly helpful with the Bachelor Diversity Campaign stuff. And, we were just going back and forth with her behind the scenes a good amount. So
I name check her all the time to make myself seem cool, but I mention her now because I think that she was a leader in being outspoken and not being afraid to address politics, but it's just happening more and more. And so I want to talk about that, but let's just go back to Bachelor in Paradise 2016 for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Really foundational. I mean, that was Ashley and Jared's second time on Paradise, or Ashley's second time, I believe. And that was sort of like, I think one of the culminating events in their timeline. It was the Nick redemption story. And it was kind of like when Paradise was still a bit of a free-for-all. It still very much had the Bachelor Pad energy, though it was Paradise. Have you ever seen Bachelor Pad?
I've seen clips of it, but I really need to just go back and consume the entire thing.
I think it's on HBO Max.
Okay, all right. Duly noted.
You could check it out. So you've never seen Claire. She's new. Did you watch the Winter Games in 18?
I went back. So I've since like gone back to like certain things. So I did see Winter Games. So that's like one where I was watching along with everybody else.
Love Winter Games.
Yeah. No, I did too. And like I was so bummed about Summer Games. Like, I mean, I'm hoping that I'm really curious to see what they do with production schedules, whether they'll just scrap that for next year. Because like they theoretically could still do it.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
I heard the Summer Games was supposed to shoot like in America in the spring in the South. And so they definitely could do that. I think it's a question of like, will people want to do that and who knows? But I forgot the Summer Games were even supposed to happen, but you know, what can you do?
Yeah, we've lost many a thing this year. So it's just
low,
one of the many.
The list, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about when Matt James's production is kicking off?
Oh man, I think he's there now.
Soon, I think.
Yeah, so I think
he's
Matt
still
James is there
on
now.
social media. He's still posting.
Yeah, I think they're getting everybody there. So I think like October, like kind of like beginning middle of October seems like a time where they're going to start over there.
Yeah,
it seems like they're gearing up a bit.
And I think they're aiming to do Claire starting October 13th, which has been confirmed through. Yeah. And then I was like, game it out. It would go like right up until the end of the year if it follows the normal cadence. Man, like, who knows?
That could be wild, like having it go like right through Thanksgiving and towards Christmas. I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I'd love to actually even get into that because I mean, I'm looking forward to it a lot just because there's not really much else going on. So I'm like just craving Bachelor content, even if I'm like, I don't even know what we're in store for, but I'm, excited just like have that back and have like Twitter back a little bit. But I think it's going to be interesting. I think if I were to make a prediction,
yes, please do.
Less people, not necessarily like who's she gonna, like that sort of prediction, but I think less people are going to watch, not because of any fault of Claire or maybe Tayshia, like we
take Tayshia to be a certainty here. It's Clayshia. It's Clayshia in these parts.
Yeah. Is Tayshia canon yet? Like, I don't know if we're allowed to. Okay.
On this podcast, she is.
Well, I think it's interesting because I was thinking, with like Listen to Your Heart and obviously like Bachelor Goat was a lot different because it wasn't, again, like this like canon kind of series.
Sure.
But I do think less people were watching it just because with these like Corona times, like we're not like on the same like timetable and there's not like water cooler talk, at work the next day. So like schedules don't really matter. So people aren't like, oh, like Mondays at 8, like I got to make sure I watch. There's like plenty of things on Netflix they could watch instead. They're not like, casually talking to friends and coworkers about the Bachelor and Bachelorette stuff, which I think is a big reason why a lot of people watch. So I'd be curious to see what happens.
That's interesting. Listen to Your Heart. I was happy to have it at the time. In retrospect, it was so bad. And like that will just be like a relic lost to time.
I disagree. I loved Listen to Your Heart. And it was really, I know it's like a very, I don't know. I actually didn't really get why people were shitting on it that much.
Well, here's my thing. This is the positive Listen to Your Heart. I loved when they were all just at the non-Bachelor mansion, when it was like in Simi Valley. I think it's called like the Hummingbird Ranch. I loved when they were there. And it reminded me of Paradise in the best way. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that the Clayshia season will be good. I think the single location actually breeds a kind of drama that the show needs more of. And it's one of the reasons why Paradise works. I think when they started traveling and and it was very unclear like what the rules of the show was, like, okay, so like you have to win American Idol and also fall in love. That's just like a little bit too much. I will say I'm a shameless company woman over here. I love a Spotify daily mix. I listen to mixes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And a song came on and I was like, what is this? This is interesting. And I look, It was Chris and Brie. Chris and Brie was being
Oh,
fed to me by
man.
the algorithm. I couldn't
Do you
believe
remember
it.
what song it was? Because I've
No.
listened to a couple of their stuff, but so I really liked them, but also Rudy, like her singles, because I think
Really
Chris
talented.
and Brie mainly did like covers on that album that they put out, but Rudy has like some really good songs. She kind of gives me like a little bit of like an Ariana Grande vibe with a lot of her stuff.
She's really good.
Yeah,
She clearly stayed on the show longer than she should have because she was a good
yeah,
singer. But hey, that's
yeah,
okay. Why did you think the show was good? Like
yeah.
what's your sell on Listen to Your Heart?
So I do agree with your take where it was a lot better in the beginning because again, like Bachelor in Paradise is still like my favorite, part of this whole franchise. Oh, and also to kind of like go back to that whole thing, like how I got started and all that
Sure.
was Bachelor in Paradise was how I started because used to be at BuzzFeed, so I was like more in the media space, like when that was on, and just like my boss at the time was like, "Oh yeah, like we should all like watch this together and talk about it." She had been watching for years, so I was like,
Wholesome
"Oh
content.
yeah, yeah, no, right." It's like, "Oh yeah, it could give us like a little fun thing to." So I started watching it, watched it with a friend, just jumped right into Paradise, so was missing so much context and. The thing that was interesting and what I think really hooked me initially is especially without that context, I would watch a situation and watch like certain people. And, if I was watching with someone, we would just have viscerally different reactions to certain people where I'd be like, oh yeah, like I really like so and so. Like I remember Kayla Quinn, for example.
Of
It's like I
course.
really, yeah, it's like I
I'm a
really like
Ben
her.
Higgins fanatic, so of
Yeah.
course his memories, his
Oh
season's
yeah.
seared into my memory.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because so she was on that Paradise season too. She was the
Yeah,
one pulling Jared away.
Jared was into her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I remember like really liking Kayla. It's like, oh, she seems like really sweet, and like my friend was like, she's so fake, like, and I'm like, oh my god, like, and then just like just like the psychology of all that was really fascinating to me. It's like, oh, like why do you think she's fake? Why? So it kind of got to this different place.
So you're really into Listen to Your Heart. I was going to say, I think that
Yeah.
show was partially hurt obviously by COVID. It was just like a crazy moment. And like, while you'd think people were watching time TV, it was actually more diffuse than everything. But also, I've been thinking a lot about this various stages of COVID. Stage 1 was dominated by Tiger King and Ozark, like completely.
Yeah.
That's like,
right.
It was just what everyone was watching. And then like, we were still new to like the Zoom production game. So it was like, oh,
Yeah.
cool. They can do a telethon and whatever. So I think that obviously a victim of the time, but I don't know if it would do much better regularly.
No, I don't think it would have either. Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I do. Well, okay. So going back to the defense of it, right.
Yeah.
Is, I do understand like what you're saying where I think it's sort of like lost its way towards the end because it was like, do we want to be American Idol or do we want to be like a Bachelor show?
Yeah.
And it was trying to be both at the same time, which made the rules very confusing. So I get that. And I think it would actually benefit from, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but I think if it was extended a little bit more and that certain things could play out, then, and you could actually like see connections form more, then I think it could make like a little bit more sense. Because I remember it was, it was like Rudy and I'm forgetting the other Matt. Is that
Matt,
who her
yes.
partner was?
Yeah.
Like they were definitely like kind of rushed into a relationship where I'm like, I don't think that they were ready to like get engaged. They were just kind of like talking a little bit. And it was like, all right, we're 2 weeks in, so we got to like really make this happen. But what I did really like about it is I think it's interesting. A lot of people I know criticize Bachelor, rightfully so, for leaning into this like influencer culture and kind of like, oh, everybody's so kind of like built in a lab to go on Bachelor, and you're seeing that more and more. And I thought like these people were a little bit more unique.
Yeah, they
like
were.
They had more, just like more individual kind of looks that you could also tell that, and who knows how true this actually is, but they just seemed a little less prepared for the Bachelor experience in general. A little like, some of them like didn't even know Chris Harrison's name, and like that there was like some true like authenticity. I thought that kind of came from
there was
it.
like a roughness to it in a way.
I
agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that, and I am hopeful that with Clayshia's season, the fact that the men are older, and not to say that they're old, like there's plenty of 27-year-olds in the bunch, but they are older, and that makes a big difference, I think, also in terms of like just how you approach the whole scenario. That's one of the reasons why Nick has always been fun. It's just because he's been a little bit more seasoned at life. So I'm looking forward to it. But here's the case for ratings being good, which is that with sports, we've seen that like when there's golf on, people just like huddle around their TV and they're so excited about it because they just miss new programming. So we'll see. I think in general, like TV ratings are down. Like I think even football ratings are down, but like for events and things that people care about, there is a big following. So we'll see. I'm curious to see how Tayshia does as the lead. I'm like really excited about it. I think that she like just seems so lovely, and I'm curious to see like how she like manages the game. Essentially, what kind of coach is she? What kind of game manager? So I can't wait. But I don't know. I think it'll just be good to like not just be living in the Bachelor internet and like actually having a new show, because when the show's not on, it kind of like devolves into all of these like hypotheticals, and like Bachelor Reddit and Bachelor Twitter are just like so obsessive. This episode of Bachelor Party is brought to you by Folgers. Mornings set the tone for the rest of your day, and so does your first cup of coffee. So it's important to have a coffee that's up to the task. Folgers offers so many varieties, whether you're looking for a smooth or rich cup of coffee. Folgers has a roast that will always surprise you with delicious flavor. Folgers is available in a range of varieties, including dark roasts like Black Silk and Noir. It's also available in K-Cup for Keurig. I can't go more than an hour with that coffee, and I think it's the same on The Bachelor. I mean, they're up so late that you have to imagine they wake up and immediately go for a brew. I mean, I hope they're having Folgers, because do you remember that classic jingle? The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. And Bachelor Twitter is where a lot of conversation's happening right now. And this is one of the things I want to talk about. And Brett, you were one of the founders of the Bachelor Diversity Campaign, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah. And it's like there was a good amount of people, and I even always kind of go back and forth. Like I don't even like calling myself like a founder of it. I'm more just like I'll give you like the story of it. It's like, talking about where all this conversation happens. There's like Bachelor Twitter, Reddit. But what I think is very underrated, and I know that you have a group as well, is like these Facebook groups.
I was going to say I don't underrate it. Yeah, major.
It's like your Facebook group. There's my Facebook group, which is where the Bachelor Diversity Campaign started. There's this woman Chloe who just like kind of posted when phone, especially initially, and then it has like very much its own megaphone now, which I'm very grateful for. But initially I was just screaming in the DMs of literally every single Bachelor person I've ever communicated with ever, where it's like, listen, you came for my memes, but now you got to stay for this Bachelor Diversity Campaign that I'm going to pitch you.
In addition to Big Rach, who was really keen to get involved.
Oh, it was a lot of people. Like it was, like Tyler C, Ben Higgins, your boy. Nick was really supportive. It's like Taylor. Honestly, it was really
Taylor's
shocking.
Been pretty amazing the last couple of months.
Yeah.
It just shows you what a crappy edit she got on the show. Because she's been so substantive with what she's been saying and sort of like her actions and stuff. I think that's been cool. And I also just want to mention, I actually interviewed Daniela Gonzalez and Sam Hoffman for the pod.
I remember. Yeah.
But it was set to run, and then they announced Matt was the Bachelor, and like it just didn't take that into account, so we never ran it. But it was like a really great conversation, and they were really lovely, and I was really glad to talk to them. Just wanted to acknowledge them. But I think, and it's been interesting, like, Tyler, I praise Tyler a lot. I do think that it is warranted in this particular situation where he is such a, in some ways, like generic Bachelor candidate or Bachelor contestant, Bachelorette contestant. And one of the reasons like we became so obsessed with him was because he actually like had a type of depth and like contour to his personality that you didn't frequently get from Bachelor people. So last summer,
especially Bachelor men.
Yeah, especially Bachelor men. It was such like a shock when he was like, very early on, kind of like willing to reference politics or like a position on something. And that was like pretty shocking. And now the last couple of months, it's been I think obviously the Bachelor Diversity Campaign has been a really big piece of it. But just as the world is evolving and changing, and obviously the Garrett controversy just has brought so much to light about, or it's just really made politics unavoidable. And I think there's a conversation out there about like whether Bachelor Nation should include politics or not. I think so. I actually have not really. It hasn't really made my feeds because I think like so many people, I have a real echo chamber. So the people that I follow mostly are like comfortable with there being a political bent and like kind of acknowledge that perhaps it's inescapable at the moment. But there is like this conversation about like, does politics belong in The Bachelor, which is just like, so it's not funny, but it's so closely mimics to politics belong in sports. And that, which is a conversation that's been happening a long time. And, you know, working in sports media, very aware of how people perceive that and how it's always been a conversation. And it's just been interesting and surprising to see who chimes in. And I guess I'm curious, like for you as kind of like a independent Bachelor commentator, who definitely leans into the political side of things, like what has been your experience online, and like who have you been communicating with, if you're comfortable saying, that's also like wanted to be a part of the sort of like rising voice of Bachelor people who want to acknowledge politics and be a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, unfortunately, it's a real small room, you know, and as far as like, should politics be involved with Bachelor, be involved with sports, it's like, we're at a point where, you know, like politics can't be like untethered from life, you know, and that includes Bachelor, it includes sports. So it like really, again, it kind of gets into this whole layer of privilege where it's like, I don't feel like politics right now. It's like, well, like none of us are really into politics at the moment. I mean, man, it's been a week, but you know, just because something isn't like cute to deal with and cute to acknowledge doesn't mean that it shouldn't be a part of like the conversation. And also to not just do I think it's necessary, I just think it would be interesting. And I think it like, you know, you're looking like, for example, the conversations that I like most are conversations you kind of get from other dating shows, like Dating Around, for example. Like I think about what I want.
Around.
Yeah, I love Dating Around too. And I think about what I would want from the Bachelor franchise, you know, and obviously too, a part of what makes Bachelor successful is like they do have like this formula, right? And then they do lean into like the cheesiness and all that. But you know, I really long for the contestants speaking a little bit more about, you know, maybe it's politics, maybe it's just kind of like a little bit more like real topics instead of just speaking in platitudes. You know, a lot of it's just like, oh, you know, I really feel like I'm forming a connection with you, falling in love with you. I love my family. You know, it's all these just general like cool, but like, you know, can we get into this a little bit more? And this isn't politics related, but one of my favorite conversations was Rachel and Peter Krause back in the day. You know, just talking about one, their gap, you know, their little gap in the teeth. And then the other one was when they talked about therapy and they talked about going to get like relationship counseling after breakups. And I was like, yeah, like that's like the kind of conversations I want to see.
I think in general, conversations about therapy on big platforms are like always gratifying. I was on Jam Session, which is a different podcast that I co-host with my colleague Amanda Dobbins. We were talking about how exciting it was for Core Jefferson to thank his therapist in his acceptance speech at the Emmys this week.
Yeah.
And I think that anyone who's ever like really felt gratitude and just like pride in their work, like from working with their therapist, like can really relate to that. And there's some, and the funny thing about The Bachelor is they have a staff psychologist, like they have someone on hand. And so like therapy is a part of the show. But I think like the cynical and probably unfortunately true such story there is that they're there because it's such like a unhealthy environment for humans that like you need to have some kind of mental health support, which I feel like I'm saying with a little bit too much glee in my voice. But it's just like, I think one thing with The Bachelor right now that I'm very aware of heading into this Clayshia season is like, it's really exciting because we're going to have another Black Bachelorette and then a Black Bachelor. And like, it feels like there's some progress with how the show is with how the show is representing, you know, like just the world. Right. But on the other hand, there's still so many like sinister facts that you have to kind of confront and decide like if you're okay with them or not. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with some of the honesty of like, let's hear people's political views because like we're trying to have like a more full show. Today's episode is also brought to you by Schmidt's. It can be tough to find a natural deodorant that works the way you need it to. Some don't last long enough, some just don't smell nice. But if you're looking for a deodorant that keeps you fresh all day, naturally, and offers a variety of seriously amazing scents, you want Schmidt's. It's the natural deodorant that works. Schmidt's is the most awarded natural deodorant brand of 2019. Their formulas use innovative ingredients derived from plants and minerals, as well as coconut oil and essential oils to help neutralize odor to keep you feeling fresh. And it's never formulated with aluminum or artificial fragrances. Choose from scent combinations like lavender and sage, rose and vanilla, charcoal and magnesium, and many more. I will definitely be choosing lavender and sage. Lavender's been one of my go-to deodorant scents for so long, and now I'm really happy I can get it in a natural deodorant. If you have sensitive skin, Schmidt's thought of that too. Its sensitive line, featuring hemp seed oil and rich natural deodorants, are made without baking soda, they help neutralize odor, and they keep you fresh. Schmidt's natural deodorant works. Visit schmitz.com to learn more or find it at a retailer near you. Today's episode is also brought to you by Article. Your home tells your story. Whether you're an art lover, craft collector, or just love a well-curated space, Article is here with pieces that help you showcase your personal style. With designs crafted from solid wood, touchable textures, and a refined color palette, Article's latest collection makes it easy to curate a space that feels uniquely like you. Article combines the curation of a boutique furniture store with the comfort and simplicity of shopping online. Its team of designers focuses on beautifully crafted pieces, quality materials, and durable construction. They are dedicated to a modern aesthetic of mid-century Scandinavian, industrial, and bohemian designs. Plus, you save up to 30% over traditional retail prices. Fast, affordable shipping is available across the US and Canada, and it's free on orders over $999. And all in-stock items are delivered in 2 weeks or less, and there's a 30-day return policy with simple returns and exchanges. I have several Article pieces, and I've never been disappointed in them. They've lasted many years already, and they've got a long life to go. They look stylish but classic, and they just really make my home feel more tied together. Article is offering our listeners $50 off your first purchase of $100 or more. So go to article.com/bachelor and the discount will be automatically applied at checkout. That's article.com/bachelor to get $50 off your first purchase of $100 or more.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think it would just add so much value to the show. And before I forget to the reason why I wanted to jump in on the therapist point, because that was a big item in the Bachelor Diversity Campaign, was calling for mental health resources. And we do acknowledge that, they have that on staff person. But then if you think about that more too, it's that person is there on behalf of the Bachelor
Production.
or whoever, whether it's the production company or ABC or whoever it is. So, it's their job is to make sure that Bachelor doesn't get in trouble, essentially. And that's maybe too harsh of a canvassing of it, but I think for the majority, of cases, it's probably true. And they're essentially there to mitigate risk, and they're there to, make sure that they're mentally unstable enough, but not legitimately mentally unstable. They're trying to make sure that they're in a place of discomfort, but not this person
not
should not
danger.
be on the show.
Discomfort, but not danger. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And think about this coming season. I mean, not only has everyone been living in a restricted state due to COVID for the last 6 months, but it's also so hot in Palm Springs in July and August. So hot. I once went to Arizona in August, and it was I still think of it and get sweaty. I cannot imagine spending 6 weeks in the desert of California.
It's not fun. I can't imagine. Yeah, it's not my vibe either. If it's above 85, I would just tap out. That's not for me.
Plus, with COVID, you're supposed to stay outside. Obviously, if everyone's quarantining and tested, you don't need to do that. The NBA, obviously, they're indoors quite a bit. They're also in Florida, another really fucking hot place right now. But but I was just thinking, what a just lose. I mean, you need a lot of cold pools, but then will their makeup be dripping? And just all this stuff, will the heat make them go insane? It would make me go insane. So
yeah. Well, listen, it's if you're looking for these people to just break under stress, it's well, that's going to be an additional stress factor. The fact that it's just so damn hot.
Yeah. I think also, I know it's going to be crazy, but another thing I just have kind of noticed, and I think is interesting, is there's like like the rest of the country, there's a real divide in values, I think, of like people who support Garrett versus like people
Mhm.
who it's not even like the people who are like calling for Garrett to like speak up or for Becca to say something, but it I think like that's almost like kind of separate from some of the other stuff I've seen percolating where like Derek Peth is like very pretty
Mhm.
active on Twitter, like
Yeah.
advocating for voting and like typically left-leaning causes. Jason Tardik is pretty left-leaning as well. And his brother was tweeting about LGBTQ rights as it relates to the Supreme Court. And I think that, and obviously like one of the reasons Jason's always been such an appealing figure is because of his family and how close he is with
Yeah.
them. And one thing that was really cool on the show is when they introduced his brother and they didn't really comment on him being gay. They're just like, this is his brother and this is his partner.
Yeah. Which is like
And
how it should be ideally,
yeah, absolutely. And so um I think that it just sort of like in so many other places, one of the reasons why it's hard to kind of like conquer politics or like have it be a part of the sport of the show. That's really how I view reality shows these days is because it's so divided. There's no,
Yeah.
again, like there's like no nuanced conversation. There's no calm conversation. All you have to do is like search Rachel's name on on Twitter or Instagram and like see what kind of crazy shit people say to her.
No, I know.
And
I know.
the fact that people like think that's normal and okay is like just so bizarre. And then
Yeah.
you're just like, fuck this. Like I don't know. It's just it's so weird to see like the broader, more intractable problems of society like really showing up within the Bachelor world. But I guess that speaks
Yeah.
to both its success and
Yeah. I do think like my expectations for them, I mean, my expectations for them covering politics in general is very low
right.
and all that. But I do think if they were to, I do think it would be fair for them to kind of, scratch the surface. Like even if they just like said Trump's name and it's just like, do you support Trump? Like if someone just said that flat out, like I would love to see that. They don't have to get into like the minutia of it all. Like
Sure.
we can handle that on Twitter probably more than we should. Like we'll all take it from there. But even if they kind of dip their toe into the water of politics, like that, I think would be enough. Oh yeah, and you mentioned Derek, but yeah, he's like one of the few. Like one, I'm like really close to him as far as just Bachelor people
Oh, cool.
that have kind of like breached the like Bachelor friend to real friend barrier.
Sure.
There is a bit of
Sure.
a line. And yeah, so like and honestly, all the people who've crossed the line are like these people who are really, active in talking about politics. And, one's Derek, one's like becoming Rachel, we've been talking a good amount more. And then Ashley Spivey, I mean, I can't like, credit Ashley Spivey enough, just is so damn smart and actually kind of like has gotten me to be more active too. Cause I
Cool.
think like a lot of people, and I'm still very much getting there because it's really easy to get overwhelmed by it all and just overwhelmed by having the conversation. Um, well, because I got like a flashback to this goes back to when Black Lives Matter, like that movement was taking off again earlier this year, and I remember I was listening to Ben and Ashley's pod, and they were talking about it. I remember Ashley talking
Ashley
about
I.
Ashley I, yes. She was, oh yeah, that's like confusing.
Yeah.
Ashley I was talking about how she wants to like have these conversations, but then she gets like really overwhelmed and like she doesn't know what to say, and then she gets
Yeah.
scared. And it's like I get that, no, I definitely get that. And I think how I would compare it is like, if you're trying to like learn like an instrument or something, you're gonna like suck at first. It's gonna be
Sure.
super uncomfortable. You're gonna want to quit. But if you like push through and practice, and I think there was a thread by Akila Hughes that kind of touched on this on Twitter, where it's like you have to like practice this stuff to like get a little bit better at it. So I think the show needs to practice it. I think us as like Bachelor viewers and just like people need to kind of like practice it, and it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but then we kind of power through. But yeah, anyway, so that's like just like Ashley actually got me to do like door to door canvassing for the first time.
Nice.
Obviously,
Cool.
we can't do that as much now, but
Cool.
so there's some people, unfortunately, too few, who are doing a good amount of work.
Well, I think that just like this sort of also speaks to a couple of things, which is I'm not even sure I want politics to be on The Bachelor proper, The Bachelorette. I don't really. But I think that the line between show and not show is blurrier than ever, right? Like especially as The Bachelor itself is creating more content outside of the show. And like, they now have 2 podcasts, one being Bachelor Happy Hour with Rachel and Becca, and the other being Clickbait with Tayshia, Hannah Ann, and Joe, which is just so baffling to me, but I wish them the best of luck.
That's kind of where I'm at too. It's like I feel like the names were kind of picked out of a hat, but also we'll see like what happens.
Yeah, totally. I'm just like, okay. I actually think, Tayshia's about to be super famous as the Bachelorette.
Yeah.
And I actually could see Hannah Ann over time developing a cool personality that maybe you'd want to hang out with on a podcast. I don't know if I feel the way about Joe, but again, good luck to everyone. But I just say, like, it's a lot harder to kind of legislate like what you're seeing on the show versus like all the ancillary content, not only from sort of like fans and hangers-ons like you and I, but also from the people who are actually on the show that then they're like putting onto these podcasts and like the Bachelor tour. Like, it's kind of, there's a lot of like comps throughout pop culture where like sort of the thing becomes so big that like there's a whole ecosystem around it.
Yeah.
And just because like social media and podcasts are such a big part of the Bachelor economy, the fact that the Bachelor itself is like wading into those things is just kind of like makes it all very confusing. And I think when there's like conflict over politics, or even like with Colton, clearly, based on the information that has come out from the police reports and lawsuit, is that it's just sounds like Cassie was in a really precarious situation. I wish her the best of luck, and honestly, if he needs help, I hope he gets it too. You know what I mean? Like, but it just makes like the way that you get to know these people very differently. It used to be a lot easier to be like, this is Nick. He's been on The Bachelor 4 times. And now he's with Jen on Paradise. And this is Ashley. She cries a lot and she's a virgin. Like, but now, both but by their own hustle, and I give Ashley a lot of credit for that, and by the machinations of the franchise, like, they're actually a lot more than that. Like Ashley is someone who like now we're probably going to follow her on her pregnancy journey or whatever that is. Right. Like,
it's gonna go like a good amount of time. Yeah.
And it's just like, it's so weird. And so I almost think that like one of the reasons I'm like trying to like calibrate getting back into the Bachelor state of mind as we approach Clayshia's season is that there's just like so much Bachelor noise out there as well that it's funny to think about like what will the show be, where you just feel like you've been exposed to so much Claire in particular, but Tayshia as well, like information over the last like 4 months or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're kind of like talking about how all the lines are blurred between like show and, podcasting or show and like and Twitter or like their backgrounds. I mean, look at the past couple seasons, whether it's Paradise, Bachelorette, whatever. And, you look at like Becca and Garrett, how like if you just looked at what Garrett was on the show, it was entirely different from how a good amount, well, I guess it depends on what sector of Bachelor Nation you're in, but it's a lot different than like how a lot of people view them. And they ended up having to acknowledge it on the show, or they ended up acknowledging it on the show because it had been such this thing in the ether. And then, so that's a major example. But then you look at, JPJ calling out Derek's podcast and like all it's really just starting to interweave like crazy.
Podcasts have really gone mainstream, when The Bachelor has 2, then it's gone.
I know, really major. 2. I mean, that's wild.
Yeah, seriously. It's just it's funny. I think that like a lot of these questions get obviated when the show is actually on, because it's such a focus week to week on the action on the show, and also following the new contestants, like the sort of ever replenishing field of people. It's kind of fun. Again, it makes it like sports, but it's interesting. One thing has not happened, almost did. I believe that someone from Becca's season almost made it onto the challenge.
Oh man,
which is currently filming, but didn't happen. Survivor people are now on the challenge, so it's an ever expanding ecosystem. And we'll have to see what happens with the next Bachelor.
Well, then you had what, Chase on that like X on the Beach or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
That show. So they've kind of like been spreading their wings a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I feel bad for the women of Peter's season that they didn't get a Paradise run. Like that just really hurts.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Oh, so I was talking earlier about I'm really curious if, so obviously we have Clayshia, coming
Yeah,
up.
exactly.
And then we have Matt right after. I'm curious, are they going to go right to Bachelorette again? Like, do they want to get back on schedule? Do they want to do Paradise? Are they going to do, I'm really curious what they do.
I have learned in the last 6 months that trying to make predictions of timelines is stupid. However,
Sure.
I do think that they will try to get back on track, will be my guess. Although, maybe they try to do summer games. Like, I don't know, because the Olympics are supposed to happen next year.
Well, the thing is, too, it's like, although they would pretty much have to have everybody full time on that show for like the next year, it benefits them having more content. If they're able to shoot it, film it, they'll obviously be able to find people for it. Then it does make sense for them to just like Bachelorette, Bachelorette, probably a Summer Games, and then Summer in Paradise or Bachelor in Paradise.
And this applies to like all of television, but really The Bachelor in particular. There's so many things that like will change because of COVID, right? Like, a lot of trends that were accelerated across sectors or whatever. I'm curious to see if travel becomes a big part of the show going forward, or if they like just make it a more localized show, because I actually think that works well. I think that kind of adds to the pressure of the situation when you don't travel. And so I don't really know why they do travel, except for like pretty sets. And that's a real relic of like the year 2005, essentially, and they used to like, and now we're going here. Travel, it just seems like so unnecessary that in a way to save money, although, they get so many trade outs that it's not like it's so expensive for them. So I'm curious to see if that comes back.
Yeah, I do think they do it in general as like this way to show that they've risen the stakes, where it's like this group is going to Denver. It's like, okay, that's like this crop. And then like the first group that gets to go international, it's like, oh, like then they're at this stage of a relationship. So it's kind of like, it just like shows passage of time in the connection, I guess, where it's like, oh, like this is how we note it.
The natural evolution is to have a bachelor campus, and it's just always happening. Kind of like the NBA bubble, but like a bachelor campus. People move in and out, and I don't know. There's just a lot of ways to spin it. We'll have to see what happens. Brett, thank you so much for joining me. It was delightful to chat with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a blast.
What's the name of your Facebook group? I don't think you mentioned it fully.
It was Brett's Bachelor Buds. It's a little bit of a little tongue twister there. Yeah.
Great. Well, if you need another Bachelor forum, don't leave Bachelor Party. Just join Brett's Bachelor Buds.
Oh, yeah. I think there's lots of crossover. I think there's plenty that are in both. So just come on over to both. And then if you're watching from Brett's Bachelor Buds, go over to to all the groups, all these groups.
Exactly. Just join in the fun. I'll be back on Thursday. And Brett, thanks again. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, you too.